Well, it's time for us to have a conversation on perspective. You're focusing on diplomacy. Like I told you about 20 minutes ago, the president is meeting U.S. President Donald Trump. And among the issues they're discussing, one of them is trade and investment, is security, governance, regional and international matters, as well as partnership. And then you have people-to-people cooperation, and that is between the United States of America and the Republic of Kenya. Quickly, let me introduce the guests that I have. Without any particular order, let me start with the Member of Parliament for Limuru, who is a member of the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee in the National Assembly. Peter Mwathi, thank you for joining us. Ambassador Macharia Kamau is a man well known to you because he's the Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we also have Iraki, who is also an economic analyst. Thank you all very much, gentlemen, for joining us tonight. And I'll start with you, Ambassador, because you're the one who has locus on this matters. Why the sudden interest by these three powers on Kenya? That you have the president now in the United States of America. Next week, and this week actually on Thursday, the president is hosting Theresa May. And then you have the president leaving for China the following week. Why the sudden interest in Kenya?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us. It's
You're welcome.
Really good to be here. Actually, the interest isn't sudden. This represents a 10 to 15-year journey that this country has been making in diplomacy and in deepening its work in building its relationships with all these countries of the world, not just the three that you've mentioned. What we are now beginning to reap is the benefits of all that effort. The incredible investment that our current president has made in projecting this country as an incredible destination for investment. What we are seeing in our country transforming right before our eyes, our city of Nairobi, is nothing like it was 15 years ago in many, many ways. Our fundamentals, both economic, social, security, are nothing like they were 15 years ago. It's an amazing experience that this country is going through, and the world is observing and watching. And so we've been having guest after guests come into our country, but we've also been invited to country after country, because there is a clear realization that Kenya has something to offer the world, and we know for a fact that the world has something to offer us.
All right, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But Mheshimiwa Mwathi, from where you sit, and of course, in 2015 was a big year again for Kenya when President Barack Obama came, and would have the Pope following, and also, you know, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But this is the first time where you have three major powers really focused on Kenya in a span of 3 weeks. From where you sit, what is the significance of these three events that the president has to deal with?
One of them is to create confidence in the business atmosphere that there is. And so our people who are ready to do business, the people from those three powers who want to come to Kenya, either for investment or tourism or any other adventure, they are now confident that once we engage and that their powers or their countries are showing interest in Kenya, then Kenya is a destination to be in. And so I would imagine that we as Kenyans generally would stand to benefit, and especially if we get Theresa May coming at the end of the month, because she's coming with a whole group of investors or people who are interested in investment, especially in small and micro enterprises. And so our people should take that advantage and also prosecute our position so that we are able to pull them along.
All right. Yes. And of course, you remember before Brexit, David Cameron had promised, to visit the Republic of Kenya, but then didn't make it because Brexit happened and he had to resign. But very quickly, for you, Iraki, from where you sit again, because the trade imbalances between these three powers and Kenya, is quite evident. What does Kenya stand to gain in terms of, economy, in terms of our economy and sprucing it up? What do we stand to gain from these visits by the president?
A lot. If you are beautiful lady, and you are being courted by 3 or 4 men, you're likely to get higher dowry than if only one man is courting you.
What if the intention is to use?
So the fact that a lot of powers are courting us, we are likely to get more economically. We are going to gain more economically. So I'm very happy that Chinese are interested in us, Britons are interested in us, Americans are interested in us. So if we play our cards well, by setting our fundamentals right, as Ambassador put it, we are going to find a lot of investments coming to this country. And that's already happening. If you walk 5 minutes from here on University Way, you're going to find Subway there. You're going to find Pizza Hut there. And if you go up the upper hill, you are going to find Radisson Blu there, Crown Plaza there. I'm seeing Ford Motors on our streets.
Yeah.
For a very long time, we used to have Japanese and British and Chinese cars. Now we have American cars here. So we are also going to have a lot of technology coming to this country, and a lot of know-how. So in the long run, I want to see a win-win situation, where the three powers gain from us, we also gain from them.
All right.
I expect a lot of tourists to start coming from here, or to start coming to this country. Because when our president goes to the US, it is good publicity. When he goes to China, it is good publicity. When Theresa May comes to this country, it is good publicity. So I am also hoping that in the long run, when Jiko and other people in this country are going to benefit from this mutual relationship.
Yeah.
So I see it as a very bright thing, a very good thing to happen, and I want them even more to come and visit this country.
All right. Ambassador, without running the risk of speculating what the president and, President Trump are discussing right now, but from where you sit, again, being the principal secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and being a diplomat yourself for quite, a huge time, what are the direct benefits from this visit by the president to the US, and in the course of the discussions they're going to have, what are the direct benefits for the Republic of Kenya, and how will it trickle down for the common man to feel the president's visit to the US translated into something for me?
Building on what my colleague has just said, the benefits are going to be felt by the individual mwananchi. As we sit here now, His Excellency is at the White House having a conversation with his counterpart, President Donald Trump, but not just with him, but with the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Defense, with a wide range of interlocutors, with businessmen that he had a meeting with this morning, corporate heads of American businesses, some of which have just been mentioned, who want to come and do business in Kenya. What does that translate to? It translates to jobs for the average person. It translates to better infrastructure. They'll be discussing the building of the new highway to Mombasa. It translates to a trade deal to improve the AGOA arrangements that we have, which means apparels and other clothing items which are made by the average mwananchi going all the way to the United States. It translates to opening up of the new route for Kenya Airways between here and New York, which means more tourism and easier travel for us as Kenyans. It translates to better security, because we have security and defense matters that are being discussed as we sit here. It translates to a wide range of trade, tourism, security, infrastructure, health, even educational matters that are of crucial importance to us. And by the way, this is the strategy that His Excellency is now taking, not just to the United States, but in his engagement with the UK, with our colleagues from China and everywhere else. So it does translate to the transformation of people's lives here in Kenya.
And the pictures running on your screen now, of course, of the president when he arrived at Washington, DC. But Mheshimiwa Mwathi,
yes,
some of the conversations that have even emerged in the National Assembly and the Senate is as regards particularly China's, China's influence in Kenya. And some of them being said it is the road to Shanghai and their influence in the Republic of Kenya. Are you concerned that this, what the president is doing, not only in the US, Theresa May is coming, and him going to China looks like the scramble for Africa and particularly the Republic of Kenya?
Well, if it were a scramble for Kenya, for that matter, it is for our benefit, like what the PS has said. And it is very important to know that previously we used to engage with Europe and specifically Britain in most of our trade. But when there was the Look East policy, and then everything was opened up for grabs in terms of trade. And I'm telling you, that competition in itself actually made the services more available, cheaper, including goods. We opened up our markets also to China and the other countries. So that Look East policy also reduced the monopoly, or perceived monopoly that Europe would have had on us. But I'm also liking the fact that the president has gone. He's in America. He's also engaging Britain, which is Europe, and the East. So he's trying to balance out. And the net effect is that I can tell you our people are going to benefit in so many areas. You can imagine that Currently, there is this quest to open more consulates like in China, but at the same time, even in US, if we have the direct flight, people are able to easily access America. People are able to do business faster. I'm sure even our own commodities are going to be easy to transport to America. And so let us view it as an opportunity for us.
Right.
And I bet it's going to be more beneficial to us than the other countries. But that's my take.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Iraki, the president has a big four agenda. And one of them is affordable healthcare, affordable housing, there's manufacturing. And apart from affordable healthcare, which appears to have rolled out, of course, through NHIF, and you can see actions being taken, there's nothing actionable still on the ground as regards what the president is going to do about these other three agendas. Is this an opportunity that can be used by the president to woo these three partners towards his big four agenda?
Definitely. If you look at China, or you look at a country like the US, and other countries that have recently developed, like Korea or Japan, they learn from others. So there's nothing wrong with Kenyans learning from Chinese, learning from Americans, learning from Britons. So by us engaging with these countries that are way ahead of us economically, we are going to learn out from them. And I want you to pay a visit to China. And one of the things that will surprise you is the amount of foreign investment that has poured into that country. You find Germans there, you find Americans there, you find Koreans there. Every major economic power is there. So if we can do the same and attract all these major economic players into this country, they will bring their money, they will bring their investment, they will create jobs, Kenya will develop, we shall all be happy, and that's all that we want. So I don't think we should fear interacting with those countries. We should learn from them. That's why I'm very happy that we can learn something from Chinese, something from Britons, and something from Americans. Because let's accept a fact, they're ahead of us.
Yeah.
So why should we not learn away from them? Why should we not learn something from them? Whether it's manufacturing, they're ahead of us. Whether it's healthcare, whether it is housing, they all have something that we need to learn from them.
All right.
So why do we need to reinvent the wheel? We don't need to.
Okay, Ambassador, you've talked about the expansion of, or rather the construction of 6-lane highway from Mombasa to Nairobi. First of all, the interventions of America, is it a loan or what is it?
The matter is under negotiations. What we expect is that it's going to be a private-public partnership because we want to structure it in a way that is beneficial to us, that is beneficial to Kenyans, but also provides the business incentive for putting that particular piece of infrastructure on the ground. So that's the intended. As we speak, it's been discussed in the United States, and the finer details are being put on, signed up on.
So this 300 billion figure that is being floated around, is it confirmed?
It is the one that's being discussed.
It is the one that is being discussed. That means there's another loan.
No, it's a private-public partnership. In other words, we are trying to avoid a situation where we get into the loan. But let me just say that just for the record, there's an economist to my left. There's nothing wrong with loans. There is no country on earth, not the United States, not China, not Japan, not Britain itself, that developed without loans. The United States only finished paying off its loans in the 1970s, loans that it had accumulated in the 17th and 18th century, and those loans came from where there was excess capital, which was Europe at the time. There's nothing wrong with loans. You can't build your home without a loan. You can buy your car without a loan.
That I agree.
So loans are fundamentally important. The question is, do you manage them in a way that is consistent with your capability to pay?
All right. IMF has already flagged or put the red flag in terms of our debt levels. Doesn't that worry you? I know loans are good, as you say, but there's again piling up on our public debt. Isn't that dangerous?
It is dangerous, but it's managed. Look at who is our number one loaner. It's the World Bank. It's the sister agency of the IMF. They know what they're doing. When they flag something, it's like you going to your banker and he says, you're almost at the limit of what you can borrow. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. They're simply letting you know you're almost at your limit.
Or you have a bad borrowing behavior.
Or maybe, but they won't lend you money then.
I'm enjoying the discussion between the two of you about debt. Because most likely all of us are either owed some money or you have refused to pay some debt somewhere. So debt is very standard. Now there's a big paradox in this country because Kenyans don't want the government to borrow money. And when you say raise the taxes so that the government raises money, you don't want. So what do Kenyans want? And then you want development, you want healthcare, you want roads, you want everything, to even free education and so on. So why should the government get money?
How does that sound? You're throwing the ball back at
Yes. So what I'm saying, I'm supporting the ambassador that there's nothing wrong with the debt as long as you put it into the right use.
Exactly.
So irrespective of how much you accumulate, it doesn't matter.
By the way, this discussion that Kenya has over borrowed is based on what?
It's a myth, actually.
Do you have any?
Is it? IMF has already flagged our borrowing.
But do you have any data to show that Kenya has overborrowed? Because I've learned some data, and I've shown that Kenya's debt is not that high compared with GDP.
It is not.
In fact, it's not. We are doing much better than even the US, even Japan.
Mheshimiwa, this matter will appear in your committee in one way or another.
Yes.
Because the president also, apart from this 300 billion that we are talking about, another 380 billion shillings loan for the construction of the phase 2 of the SGR from Naivasha to Kisumu is what the president is going to say in China.
In China, yes.
Yet another debt.
Yes.
How does that sound from where you see?
For as long as, like I agree with my two colleagues, for as long as we manage, I'm sure you also have a loan. You have a debt somewhere. You cannot be without it. So the issue is how you manage it. Do we have the political goodwill to enact a legislation that is going to address any shortcomings within the loan arrangements? Yes. Where does it come from? From all the members of National Assembly, all the members of the Senate. And then, of course, after the famous handshake, we are now working together. So if there is any legislation that is required in terms, and of course oversight, so that we make sure that we are able to pay the loan as per the terms, then we are there to offer it. So the political goodwill, I can tell you and I can assure you, is there.
All right.
Yes.
Ambassador, I see the president is also going to discuss issues of governance with President Trump. And of course, part of it is corruption. And like you say, debt is good, depending on how it is used. But one of the biggest problems you have had in the perception out there in the public is that even when borrowing this money, this money is ending up in people's pockets. What is the government doing, particularly with the signing of these loans, if they are to be signed, to ensure that there's prudent management of this money, but most importantly, that it goes to benefit Wanjiku directly?
Here I have to say I empathize very much with your question. There's no question in my mind that we have to manage our resources in a way in which we maximize the full benefit from those resources. And nothing undermines that like corruption. So there is no question that we have to do something about corruption. But there has never been an administration in this country ever that has done what this current administration is doing to root out corruption. These things are not going to change overnight. But it does take commitment, and it takes commitment not just from a government administration, it takes commitment from all the institutions of the country and from individuals. Now, there's no question in my mind that if we don't take care of this threat that is posed by the challenge that we're facing with corruption, we will not enjoy the full benefits of everything else that we're trying to do, whether it is through loans or through any other developmental activity that we wish to engage in.
In fact, Ambassador, we should point out to him that one way to reduce debt, borrowing and so on, is to reduce corruption.
Yeah, that's true.
Because if we reduce corruption, we don't need to borrow that money. We don't even need to raise the taxes. It's a very simple way of winning the war that we are having about debts and taxes.
All right.
Team corruption.
And one of the institutions that has been on the spotlight is Parliament.
Yes.
But I can tell you, the members
it's good you spoke about it, because you're the guys we expect to oversight, government and the expenditure by government.
Yes.
But it appears like it is happening in the corridors of Parliament for as less as 10,000 shillings. Is it selling your souls to the devil? What is it?
Well, the issue of 10,000 shillings has come, and I'll tell you, I found my name in that list, and I was not there. So I don't know. Of course, that's not mainstream media, but of course, people can spoil the others' reputation and names.
Yeah.
But what is important to note away from that is that even members of Parliament have accepted to go through lifestyle audit. starting with me. And most of them are saying, let us start with ourselves. So that this perception that parliament is corrupt, unless you have, of course, I can call you corrupt, but if I don't have facts on how corrupt you are and which cases you are, then those are just mere allegations. And of course, they want to soil the name of the institution. But I can tell you, starting with members of parliament, we are going through lifestyle audit we have accepted, and in case anybody fails to adhere to that, we are going to name him.
All right.
Yes.
On this issue,
Yes.
you do know when the Swiss president was here last month,
Yeah.
that we signed a framework for the returning of our assets that had been taken away from our country in a corrupt manner. We intend to do the same thing with Prime Minister Theresa May when she is here. We have a framework that's ready to sign and ready to go. This is driven by our administration, by our government. So the leadership is there. The question is, are we all going to be able to respond to the challenge that this leadership has thrown out to us?
Very quickly as we wind up, because this, in light of Brexit, the economic partnership agreement, and the last time, the president attended the East African community, Tanzania and Uganda were still pulling their feet, saying they need more deliberations. But Kenya is ready to ratify this. But still, them can be able to access EPA based on the fact that they're low-income countries and not like us, who have already been taken to the middle-income level. How is Kenya intending to pursue this to ensure that we don't lose out in terms of this deal, and discussing this with the Prime Minister Theresa May?
Let's understand that which side our bread is buttered on. Our greatest exporters and importers, our best friends, our greatest security guarantors are our neighbors. Our future lies mostly with our neighbors. So in the context of Brexit and in the context of the post-Brexit trading regime, we want to be able to trade with Europe, and we also want to trade with our traditional partner, the UK. But we also need to understand each other how that's going to happen, because we have no wish to harm our relationship with Tanzania, with Uganda, and with all our neighbors. It's something it's a balance that we have to find, and we're working very hard on.
All right, back to the US. 57 billion worth of goods is what America is exporting to Kenya. For us, 47 billion. So you're saying there's a 10 billion difference. What can we do to bridge that gap and ensure again that apart from AGOA, that there are more markets opened up for Kenyan products?
It's very simple. You want us to export more to the US? Let's have something that is unique, something that is innovative, something that Americans did. So do we really know what Americans want? We need to come up with something they are going to buy. The same way they make things that we buy.
Yes.
So one way to reduce that trade imbalance is to make Kenyans more innovative. For example, have we exported M-Pesa to America? I don't think Americans use M-Pesa. So let's come up with something innovative that Americans are going to buy. The same way we buy their hamburgers, the same way we buy their cars, that imbalance is going to disappear very quickly.
At the end of the day, Mheshimiwa Mwathi,
and I forgot, let's have more Americans coming. They are tourists with their dollars.
At the end of the day, we'll be relying on you guys for legislation and issues like that.
Yeah.
But in terms of our relationship with these superpowers, do you think we need to be cautious?
Well, cautious, yes, but also our constitution allows that we can trade. There are some treaties actually that are international that are also applicable in our country. But what is important as we move forward, we will need just to look at the arrangements that are there, tighten them, and of course put checks and balances. And I can tell you the goodwill to legislate all that is in Parliament. And further to that, these big economies who are coming have got some advantage over us, which probably we can borrow. What we only need to do is that we have to check on whether they are coming to monopolize one line or not. But I'm happy that we have US, we have UK, and we have the East, all of them trying to compete. And once there is competition, then you get value for money.
Very quickly, Ambassador Macharia, can you confirm that Kenya will be seeking the support of the US in terms of non-permanent, representation in the that is the UN Council, Security Council?
Absolutely, it's one of the issues that we expect to take up. The United States recognizes Kenya as one of its premier partners in matters of defense and security in our region, and they value us, and we value them. And I think there is a mutual benefit to be gained by Kenya being on the UN Security Council.
All right. I hope after these 3 meetings we can all be able to constitute this panel once more and get to discuss, the real things in terms of what the president will agree with President Trump as well as Theresa May on Thursday, and when he travels to China, maybe after 2 weeks, I will call you gentlemen so we can have a sit down again and get to size out the real agreements. And thank you very much for making time to come, irrespective of the challenges that were there with the rain and issues like that. Yes. We thank you very much.